and welcome to this final episode of Faith in the Parish. I'm Kathryn Percival and I'm the Canon Chancellor and Vice Dean at Portsmouth Cathedral.
And I'm Dave Chesney. I'm the Vicar of Ascension Church in the Borough of Newham in East London and also the Area Dean of Newham.
I'm Becky Stevens and I'm the Vicar of Mainey in the Diocese of Birmingham and also the Advisor in Women's Ministry.
And I'm Toby Battle. I'm the Parish Priest of Swindon Newtown, which is the town centre parish for Swindon.
And we've noticed that there are some common themes in the previous episodes, in all our dialogues with our contributors. One of them is that everybody seems really enthusiastic about the parish, perhaps not surprising, but really interesting to spot nonetheless. Everybody still thinks that the parish has a future, and we've had some really great feedback about the impact of this project. Dave has a comment.
Yeah, I mean, really encouraging comment, and I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, "Thanks for Faith in the Parish, interesting discussions, very C of E. In the trailer, I was struck by a Christian story about the vicar who had 9 expressions of church within his parish. This is shaping my thinking around Kirkley Parish. The challenge is to bring the people who traditionally see themselves as the church, that is the Sunday congregation, to the point of view that the other groups are also part of our church, even if they don't worship with us. They are still part of building God's kingdom, though they may not describe it as such." Very encouraging.
Yeah, oh, that's great. And so, through this emphasis on the importance of the parish, we've really heard that it's really the shape of the parish, isn't it, that's in contention here in terms of the resources, both financial and human, and how that is going to go forward in the future. And as well as these common themes, we also found there was a kind of competitiveness in the philosophies going on, and a tension in some of our conversations. So should we kick off with episode 1?
Yeah, I mean, some of what we found in episode 1 really was that some of that competition is based on quite a binary view of things, isn't it? There's a sense there are some people who are pro-parish and some people who are anti-parish, but actually what the parish is has always evolved over time. It's never been it's never been constant. It's been something organic. It's been something that has historically looked very different in some places than in others. If I think in my own deanery, for example, my parish is a town centre parish. It's just a very different beast from some of the rural parishes at the edge of our deanery. And so this idea that there is one thing which is the parish, and that's one thing that has been constant forever, just isn't right. And so there's room for more openness there. There's a sense in which too that this idea of the parish being the only thing in the Church of England actually hasn't been true throughout its history. That there have always been other structures as well within the Church of England, which of course reflects in your episode on the idea of mixed ecology.
That's right.
That isn't something
Toby,
altogether new.
Yeah, I mean, we kicked off our episode with a question, and it's actually based on a quote which we truncated from the Archbishop of York about the future of the parish and mixed ecology. And I'm just going to quote you what Archbishop of York said about parishes. We're looking for them to be revitalised for mission. And part of the strategy going forward is that we'll develop pathways around where people are, at home, at work, at school, and in leisure. And Archbishop of York said we want more church, not less, the ministry of the whole people of God, and we need to look like the communities we serve. And we posed that question, or dare I say statement, to all of our contributors in the episode, and we asked them what their initial response was. And I remember very clearly one of our respondents, and Fiona, who was a rural archdeacon in the Diocese of Hereford, and she said, well, I hate to break it to you, Archbishop, but this is happening already. And so in the many wide and varied contexts across the Church of England, whether rural or urban, city or country. But there was also a comment about resources, and Kathryn, you mentioned about resources. Actually, how do we resource the church for mission? Is the parish the right context? What else do we need to look at? And one of our response to the questions about resources was there was a real concern about the challenge to support particularly those from the poorest communities. I am a parish priest in the borough of Newham, one of the poorest boroughs in the UK, and we see very clearly the need to be supported. And there was one comment about whatever the parish looks like, this is what is needed. Show me the money. And whilst we come to this episode with the knowledge that actually resources are scant, actually there does need to be a focus of resources on particular contexts, and certainly our respondent here said actually it just needs to help the poor. So yes, there was a very, very clear part of what mixed ecology means, actually not just a different way of doing church, because that's happening, but certainly a focused way of investing resources in the poorest of our communities.
Absolutely. Well, my episode was episode 3, and we focused on the cure of the souls, recognising that when a parish priest becomes an incumbent of a parish, the bishop shares the cure of souls with that priest, and what that looks like in general. And we had some really interesting conversations, particularly from Julia, who was an Anna chaplain, talking about actually how her ministry is doing exactly that, working with the souls in the community and understanding some of the chaplaincy, the complexities to chaplaincy and what that looks like. And we also had a really wonderful image from Bishop Andrew Rumsey, who talked about the cure of souls flowing out like a stream. And I think that that's something that I've definitely taken into my ministry following that comment. Archdeacon Gervais talked about some restructuring of parishes that is happening in Sheffield, and actually as a priest on the ground I'm experiencing that myself, in that I have one church, one parish, but actually my role will need to expand to have another parish, and so it's the conversations are really important. What does that look like? And actually what we discovered in our episode is the role of clergy and laity together offering a cure of souls is absolutely vital, and actually we can't do it without one another in order to reach the very corners of our parish. Parishes are growing in number, we get growth of numbers all the time, not necessarily growth in church numbers, but certainly those living in our parishes, and to reach all of them it takes more than just one person, which I think leads well into your episode, Kathryn.
Yeah, I'm really struck actually thinking about how there's, in one sense, there's nothing new, and I think the historical perspective of that episode, Toby, was really fascinating. And actually I was just kind of drawn back to the autumn and thinking about proclaiming the gospel afresh in each generation, and how actually this whole kind of mixed ecology in one sense isn't new, but we have to do the work and the thinking to actually see where the Spirit's leading us now. And that really came out, I think, in our episode. There was a really interesting theological and practical reflection from our contributors, and one of the really interesting and crunchy bits, I think, was about clericalism. Bishop Sadhu said, I was very struck by this, he said clericalism is an anti-God mindset, and there was a bit of an intake of breath at that point, and then Nick Shepherd followed up by saying actually he thinks that the task of ordained ministry is to get clericalism out of the way. We those of us who are ordained are there to get rid of that anti-God, anti-clerical mindset. And we then moved on to talking about the ministry of all the baptised and about our baptismal calling, and also about the duty of everyone who's present at a baptism to support that baptised person, about how it's kind of two-way and we're all there as a community. That was a really fulfilling discussion, I think, and that says almost more about ordained ministry and the task we have than about that. There's been a great deal of emphasis on empowering the laity, but actually this was more about those of us who are ordained looking at ourselves, I felt, and thinking, what is the task? Well, the task is to work together so that all of us have fruitful ministries, in that sense, with no distinction. And Karen, our other contributor, said being fruitful is about respecting each other and identifying each other's gifts and working together. There was a really interesting discussion about whether COVID has done things to us in terms of moving things on more quickly than they might otherwise have done, whether we're moving from attending church to forming church. Not everybody would necessarily agree with that, but it's certainly an interesting concept, and what that might do for our ministry. So yes, lots of interesting threads, as I think with all the episodes, weren't there? There's lots of things we've sort of held really.
Absolutely.
To think about. Yeah.
So, in a sense, all we've done is start the conversation when our sponsor, the Bishop of Doncaster, Sophie, first told us about this project. Part of the idea really was that we couldn't resolve anything, and how many of us? 7 of us in this who've been making these episodes, all come from different backgrounds. We've got our own views, our own perspectives on this. So what we've wanted to do is try to inform the conversation and make sure the conversation going forward has some roots in theology, in history, but also in pastoral practice, in the variety and breadth that there is within the Church of England. We hope that our episodes will all sit somewhere on the Church of England national website. That's right, isn't it? And that we make a contribution to a conversation which is just starting and getting underway, and no doubt will continue to develop in all sorts of interesting ways.
Thank you.